Welcome to Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is 1 p.m. Wednesday, January 29th. Thank you for your flexibility today. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So at this time is citizen input, and I do have multiple requests to speak. So Mr. Al Shirk would be first. Thank you for joining us. And good to see you again.
Thank you for having me. My name is Al Shirk. And I'm here again about the 40 acres to be acquired by Deschutes National Forest from the federal government. I kind of typed up a letter for you guys. I just want to kind of get it on record of the letter that I wrote. Oh, there we go. This is, I am one of the owners of Spring Butte Rock. We are a rock quarry established in 2020, providing a variety of aggregate products to the community of Lapine, Oregon and surrounding areas. Spoke to you last week regarding the letter you sent to Congressman Cliff Bentz on December 19th that emphasizes significant need of acquiring 40 acres of Deschutes National Forest identified in the southeast area of Lapine for the purpose of surface mining. Finley Butte Aggregate is requesting this land to expand their current rock quarry that is unable to produce the products. Spring Butte Rock is a rock quarry 2.4 miles away from the current rock quarry of Finley Butte Aggregate, who is wanting to acquire this land from the government to provide the services that is already available in that area. I'm asking you guys to contact Cliff Bentz or Congressman Cliff Bentz directly and inform him by letter that there is already a rock quarry in Lapine that provides all the services and benefits to the community that were addressed in the letter that you sent him. I got that part. Federal land does not need to be taken away from the public when there's absolutely no reason. Spring Butte Rock was established in 2020. It's my understanding that you were either misinformed that there was another rock quarry so close, or due diligence was not performed prior to the decision made to write the letter to Congressman Cliff Bentz. And thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much. And I was able to spend about an hour with you or whatever yesterday at that facility and learn all about this and the layers of it also. So I was very much uninformed. I don't know if it was called misinformed, but just, a lot more to the story.
Right, there is, and I appreciate it. And if anybody has any other questions or if anybody would like to see the facilities, please reach out to me and we can make that happen.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just follow on this public comment by saying I would be interested in having the Board of Commissioners write such a letter. And if at least one of my fellow commissioners is in support of that, I'd like us to direct staff to do that, to draft that up.
I'm supportive of that also. So we're making a decision right there for you. Any other thoughts, Commissioner?
Oh, there's always more to the story. I'd like
That's fine.
to go
So
see it.
but we're starting a process to get a follow-up letter. Okay. At this time, Mr. Mark Dickinson, as to say, please join us. You and I were speaking right before this, and this is, So we'll see where this goes.
Okay, well, as you know, this is my third week in a row that I'm here. I am not here to defame or speak any obscene gestures. It's clear that what happened here in the weeks since I was here last time is that Peter Gontowski, I went over as a courtesy when I was here last week and met with him in person to sit down and try to discuss this in a very civil and constructive way. We had what I thought was a productive meeting, lasted about 45 minutes. I went home, and then at about 4:45 that evening, I got a phone call from Mr. Gontowski, if I'm saying that right, completely screaming and yelling, unhinged, threatening me, telling me that I can't come down here and I can't speak and blah, 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 and I would do myself good not to talk and so on and forth. The phone call sounded more like something you'd see on a mob movie than a government official. It was shocking. It was appalling.
Sir, I think that any type of comments relating that are defamatory. we're
That's not
going to allow that.
defamatory. I'm making a reference to a TV
So
show.
as I say,
So,
there's no value in this. So
well,
yeah,
the
we can
value is I
eliminate
would
it
have
then.
rather spoke to my comments, but I can see what's happened now in the interim is that you've added this verbiage that's trying to,
Yeah.
silence me and create a chilling effect and infringe on my First
So
Amendment
this is a
rights.
public meeting to do the public's business.
Well, it's
and
the
you have
only
a
way I can
courtesy
address
for
you. I've
public
asked for
testimony
meetings in
here.
person with you
been
and
a-
you refuse to meet with me. So this is my only way to come down and communicate with you. I'd rather just sit down for 30 minutes in an office and have a nice civil meeting like I've done with the other officials, but you're refusing.
Well,
So
so
it
I'll
leaves
give
me
you,
no alternative than to come down and use my 3 minutes to try to speak, to try to explain the situation. I've asked for your assistance. Why you're refusing? Do I need to show up with a lawyer? Do I need to file a lawsuit? I mean, this is not the proper forum, but you're refusing to give me the proper.
well, I'll give you clarity though. I mean, I support our building official following the black and white of the state law for permitting of structures. And there's a 8-year history here and there's no negotiating.
It's not about negotiating. It's about my right to come in as a taxpaying citizen and speak to this board about the issues that I think are relevant. I have a right, a legal right, and you cannot stifle that. That is just what's the issue here. It's not about your opinion about the decision by the building department. And for that official, Peter
Let's just
Gantowski,
stop it with the
to
name.
threaten me
Yeah, no.
is completely outrageous.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
There's no right to actually make public comment at the meeting that we're handling public business at this point. It's not a public hearing. It's actually. a
My right to
courtesy.
to address my public officials.
You can submit your comments in
To
writing.
do it. I
There
could
is an
redress
email that's available on
person.
the agenda that you
the
can look
petition to
to.
government redress of grievances, my First Amendment right.
And you can submit
Like
them
a
via
copy.
email.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ron Bozell.
Good afternoon, County Commissioners. I am Ron Buzel. I've been a resident of Deschutes County for over 35 years. I just want to ask a question today. Of course, you're not under any obligation to answer it, but things are happening in this country right now. And today there's a lot of people, both who our jobs depend on and whose services people depend on federal grants. And right now they're frozen. And hopefully most of them will become unfrozen. It's too bad that this is an economy where we have to become dependent on some of these things. But what I would like you to do, and my question would be directed to you, to ask you, what is your personal favorite federal grant? And would you write a letter to our president asking him for special consideration for that? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room for public testimony? Or citizen input? Anybody else online? Okay, thank you. At this time, consent agenda. Couple
So I
seconds a
did
minute.
want to
Oh,
acknowledge
please.
that we were at Central Oregon Community College's 75th anniversary. It's an amazing, amazing school that's here in our community. And I want to point out what they do at Deer Ridge to help the inmates there. It's phenomenal. The welding program, the other programs that they are there working with people so that when they leave the prison, they actually can earn family wage jobs. And I'm very proud of what they do. And I also want to acknowledge what they did with the childcare program, the $125,000 that we gave them for opera funds. And I know they just really went on with that program. So thank you, Central Oregon Community College, for all that you do for our community.
Yeah, State of the State for Central Oregon Community College, 75-year celebration also. And we all attended this morning. Any comment? You were there also.
I mean, just to go back to Mr. Buzil's comments, we have received word that the executive order temporarily suspending federal grants and loans has been rescinded. But I see this as a, you know, I have heard about the specific policy goals that the administration is pursuing with this, and it just sort of seems like uh, um, using a big axe when you could be using a scalpel to focus on the things that you're interested in. And I'm hopeful that we will not see additional efforts like this moving forward. And, you know, in terms of, you know, some of my favorite, you know, my favorite federal grants, just last night I was talking to one of our irrigation districts here in Central Oregon who is in the process of implementing a major water conservation project that'll save, you know, thousands and thousands of acre feet of water per year. And that project was, as of last night, was in complete limbo because they did not know how they were going to be able to pay their contractors to continue with the implementation of that project. And so that's, I mean, there are so many important services in our community that are supported by federal funding, that just being one example, but it was top of brain from last night.
Thank you. So at this time, consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Item number 5, acceptance of emergency management performance grant. Nathan, good to see you. It's been a while.
Noon, commissioners. Yeah, Nathan Garrity, Sergeant, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office Emergency Manager. I'm here to request permission authorization to accept the Emergency Management Performance Grant. This is a grant that we've received every year for well over a decade that helps fund personnel staff time to support emergency management work. And so the grant, the total award is $104,016. 91,786 of that is federal funds, EMPG, emergency management performance grant funds. And then 12,230 is funds received from the state, which helps offset the match under House Bill 3059. So again, we're just requesting permission to accept and utilize those funds to do more emergency management work.
Great, thank you. As you know that I'm at OEM a little more now that I'm involved with the SIEC. So I've been in the building over there. I'm getting to know the whole org structure, but it's good to see that, you know, we have our local capacity. These are the long-term funds that keep us going down the emergency management path and being ready to respond to incidents, which is forest fire or rain on snow events. It's always interesting thinking forest fire is the biggest thing, but rain on snow can be a disaster here too, which, yeah. Any other thoughts?
I have a thought.
Yes,
We were going to ask Kevin Moriarty yesterday when I was meeting with Nick, how many fire trucks are actually in Deschutes County? Nathan, do you have any idea? You know, after seeing my friends whose houses burned down, where there was water on Eastern Malibu, but there were no fire trucks there. And I'm just wondering if we have ever that 70-mile-an-hour wind from the Northeast, like we had September of 2020, when those 4,000 homes burned on the other side of the mountain. People need to always be prepared, but how many fire trucks do we have?
boy, I would probably prefer to get that information and get it back to you. Just because the way the kind of intermutual or the mutual aid agreements amongst the agencies and how those resources are deployed kind of vary day to day. And a lot of that has to do with not only is the piece of equipment available, but is the staffing available, and then if they're deployed to other incidents. So it's kind of a moving target, but I think we could probably give you a general.
Well, at least a range,
Yeah.
because honestly, and if we know there's wind projected, let's say like that 70-mile-an-hour, you actually have to have staging, and the staging down there was so minimal that you just saw it because Malibu burned like almost the next morning. It's unbelievable. I mean, I lost a personal friend.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. You know, if I was just going to hazard a guess, I would say between 10 to 15 engines through the structural agencies. And again, that's lots of times they're on medical calls because they also provide EMS service. And And then, amongst the wildland agencies, that varies a lot between Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, and Oregon Department of Forestry. And those resources often during peak times through severity and other opportunities to move resources up into the region can actually work in our favor. So that one, it'd be harder for me to estimate. But for the structure agencies, I would say 10 to 15 probably on your average day.
So I know that Bend with that levy that passed was going to, I believe, get 2 more trucks. What about the fire truck that caught on fire when the homeless started the fire 2020, like July 1st? Was that old fire truck? Was it destroyed? Do you know? Remember, it was like a 1942 fire truck.
Oh, I think you back in the Redmond area.
Yes, right by the airport when 25 flights were
Yeah,
diverted.
I'm not sure what the status of that. I believe they've replaced that equipment, but again, I'd have to check with Redmond Fire on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just, seeing what happened down there, I just want people to be aware that you've always got to be thinking.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I think a great word of wisdom is to that point, particularly as we enter into, during times of the year, there's probably half a dozen or so days of the year where we're at maybe, half a dozen to 10 days a year, we're at, that real high risk where you have wind, low relative humidity, and the fuels are receptive to ignition. And so I think that's a great point. When you see those dry conditions plus wind, that's where we have major problems. And so community members would be well advised to be extra prepared on those days in particular. So great point.
And the one really simple thing is my husband does it a lot. He's always driving around on empty. And honestly, when something like this happens, you don't want to have to be going to the gas station. So, at least drive around with a half a tank.
Great advice. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Or the stop by the electric charger.
Well, yeah, but they had electric fire trucks in LA, and they, of course, weren't charged. 175 of them were in the shop. So there's a lot of things that were happening there, but staging definitely is really critical.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to those dozen days a year where we're on high alert, I wanted to express appreciation to the state of Oregon for over the last few years pre-positioning additional resources, for us when we knew we had the conditions for very fast moving, very fast growing fires and that potential. It's been comforting to me to know that we've had extra resources from the state pre-positioned here, staged and ready in the worst possible scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah. Nathan, I very much appreciate these federal dollars, this federal grant from FEMA coming to the county to support our emergency management program. My only question, kind of nitty-gritty financial question was where the match funding is coming from. Is that coming from one of the sheriff's office taxing districts, or is that coming from the general fund?
Yeah, the match comes from the District 1 funds, countywide services. We provide service similar to search and rescue. We provide that service regardless of if you're within a city or not. So,
Great, thank you.
So my only, request is that maybe some words about what evacuation planning means, because, and I've heard you say it, but it's good to hear from you directly. Depends on the incident and what direction it may be coming from. Because I've been in that spot where somebody's like, "Show me the evacuation plan." Well, it kind of needs to evolve real time because we don't know what's coming from where. So,
yeah, we're continually kind of going through a process improvement as far as the tools we have, updated, kind of evidence and knowledge and lessons learned. So every time there's a fire, even if it's not in Oregon or Central Oregon, we try to tease those lessons learned out. Where we're focused on is early and effective alert and warning. Identifying key transportation routes that need to be kept open and some strategies around that. And then working with our law enforcement partners to make sure that we have kind of an efficient and consistent practices around how we do evacuation. We will we'll continually be trying to those into a plan, for lack of a better word, to help kind of document what those procedures, practices, and places to get information are. I'd also just great time to point people towards our emergency dashboard, which is really popular during the summer when there's fires, but it's a year-round tool. So if you go to deschutes.org/emergency, with our partners at ITGIS, we've helped build a dashboard. So there's actually information on what the critical transportation routes are, which likely mean those are the roads you need to try to get out of your neighborhood. Information about evacuation, how to make sure you're current and up to date on your alerts. We have information in there from Genesis, which is the pre-identified zone system that we've transitioned to for kind of more rapid evacuation. So all that information is there. We really encourage people to go to that. And again, that's something we're developing all the time. So as we get more information or we learn new things, we try to adapt that dashboard.
I was to say, so for a resident in a neighborhood, it's not a piece of paper. It's policies, best practices, and it kind of gets created real time, right? I mean, because that's my point. I mean, wind could be coming from one direction or another. It could be better to go north or south. So we don't have just one piece of paper to hand somebody.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Yeah, it's we make evacuation decisions based on current and expected, as we're related to fire, but current and expected fire behavior and what those values at risk are. So if that's a neighborhood versus a recreational or an uninhabited area, that's a different situation. And again, what that fire is likely going to do. So thank you.
Yeah, just putting it out there.
Yeah, I appreciate
So,
it. Thank you.
Is there a motion?
If I could just say
Sure.
about that, I mean, I'm also under the impression that the community wildfire protection plans contain a significant amount of access and egress information. So even if you don't know which egress you're going to need to use on any given day during an emergency, it could be a valuable thing for people to familiarize themselves with those CWPPs so they know where all of them are.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I will move to authorize the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office to accept an emergency management performance grant to support the county's comprehensive emergency management program.
I'll second the motion.
Any other discussion?
I just want to acknowledge Nathan. I know he's the top person in the state. Thank you for being here with us and for all that you do and for your inspiration to keeping our community safe. So thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So calling for the vote, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.
Item number 6, amendment to an agreement allocating ARPA funds to the City of Sisters to expand inventory of affordable housing.
Commissioners, Laura Svendrick, Management Analyst. So today I'm joined by City of Sisters City Manager Jordan Wheeler, and we're here bringing forward their request for an amendment to their existing ARPA agreement. The board had awarded City of Sisters $500,000 for an affordable housing project, a 40-unit multifamily rental housing project in Sisters. The original proposal and agreement listed the income average at 65% of the area median income, or AMI. And this new request would increase the AMI to 80%, which is still within the Treasury's threshold for affordable housing ARPA projects. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jordan and he can provide some comments and then any questions from the board.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, a little introduction to the big picture of the project possibly.
Sure. Yeah. Well, good afternoon, Commission.
Is this the first time you sat?
It is. It is.
Because
Normally
we
I
see you at
all-
joint meetings. Yeah.
Right. Normally I see you in the council chambers and Sisters. So pleasure to be here today. Thank you again for your support for the City of Sisters and our affordable housing projects. And of course, the $500,000 grant. And so really, this is a small modification. I think we may even previewed this at our last joint meeting a few months ago. In working with Northwest Housing Alternatives, who we awarded the grant, our affordable housing grant program a few years ago. We've been working with them on their 40-unit affordable housing project. We discovered in finalizing our grant agreement with Northwest Housing that it would be beneficial to the project and also within our goals as a city to modify the targeted household income to 80% AMI rather than the 65% that was in the exhibit to the agreement with the county. This will allow Northwest Housing to secure some additional funding and pursue some other funding opportunities. It does match the 80% is what the definition of the city's affordable housing unit is in our community development code as well. And our city council supports this change. The project's on track. Actually, Clayton from Northwest Housing Alternatives is here today too to support this request. They have submitted for land use permits. The property has been acquired. We hope to get the decision on the land use application out this week or next week. They're hoping to break ground this year and have that project completed by the deadline by the end of 2026. Yep.
Yeah, a year.
Yes. Work fast.
Yes. Just,
Yeah.
okay.
So any questions? Love to answer what I can.
Jordan, I am really glad this project is moving forward. This is much needed housing for the City of Sisters. And I certainly understand that this bump up from 65% to 80% is probably very, very necessary for the city to to actually make the project economically feasible and move forward. I did when I saw this in our staff reports, I went back and I looked at some notes from back in the day when we were making decisions about this ARPA allocation, and you were not the city manager then, but kind of to provide a little context, at that moment in time, there was substantial concern about homelessness in the Greater Sisters area. And this project was put forward kind of as, this is what the City of Sisters is going to do about homelessness. We're not looking at shelter. We're not looking at transitional housing. We're not looking at safe parking. We're not looking at these kind of more interim kinds of things. We're just going to try to make some 65% AMI affordable housing available in Sisters, and that will that'll create opportunities for people, some of those folks who live who live outside the City of Sisters in the forest, who come to work every day, whose kids go to school in the Sisters School District. That'll provide some opportunities for those folks to fully integrate into the Sisters community. I am concerned that with this bump from 65 to 80, it makes it that much less likely that someone who's currently living in the forest in the City of Sisters area, long-term residents, are going to be able to make that jump. So I guess I want to send a question back to the City of Sisters. I'll support this change because again, it's probably necessary to make the project economically viable. But I do want to send them the question back to the City of Sisters. So if this project is going to be able to serve an even smaller component of our homeless population in the Sisters area, then what else is the City of Sisters going to do to kind of create those pathways out of homelessness for, again, very long-term residents who are just can't afford to pay rent in Sisters?
Yeah, I appreciate the background, the context. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the city council, but I can tell you that a large interest of the council is to ensure that this project and the 40 units would be first available towards our population and Sisters that are working, that currently cannot afford housing in Sisters. And I know Clayton is working hard on that and connecting with local groups within our community, nonprofits, other organizations, to create that pipeline between folks that may be not in housing that would have the opportunity first to get housing. I think there's been experience in the past where maybe that hasn't happened, and the community has been, let's support housing for our own residents and the folks that are working here. We are doing a lot of work in this area in terms of houselessness in Sisters Country. We have a group of community partners that are meeting regularly now. We've had the big community conversation where we're developing an action plan. So there's more to come in terms of other things that the city is pursuing within the means that we have as a small community. And we know as a city, one of the things that we, as you pointed out, that we do have control and a little more maybe financial means to do it is supporting more workforce and affordable housing. The surveys that we've done on the houseless population in Sisters Country, as well, there's the point in time count that's going on now too. Our houseless population, there is a large amount, a large percentage that do work in our community. And so, we do want to look to see how do we get those folks transition from living, in the national forest to housing that's available within Sisters. So we're working really closely with Clayton and his team to make sure that those conversations are happening with all the housing equity and fairness acts and things like that. But what we can do to make sure that we can create that pipeline between folks that live in the area to get opportunities to be in these units. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Please.
please join us.
Yeah.
Here we go. He's ready.
I mean, if I understand correctly, if people are being essentially recorded through the HMIS system, it does provide you with opportunities to give preferential access to affordable housing units like these.
Yeah, and so Clayton Crowhurst, Northwest Housing Alternatives, resident of Bend. I think specific little detail, we actually have a partnership MOU with Family Access Network, specifically their folks and sisters, to set aside between 5 and 10 units of the property. That's still staying in the project, regardless of this change in income level. And one of the things that they have pointed out to me in several meetings is that they work with several families with school-age children who are, kind of that definition of working homeless, where you've either got 1 or 2 adults in that household who are working and then whose kids attend school in Sisters but are living in the forest. And so, yeah, we are still sticking with that. And I'm also exploring some partnerships with a couple other organizations, one of which works specifically with domestic violence survivors, to provide housing at the property. So, yeah, I think that still is very much a goal, and also something that is both unique to Sisters in that there are a large portion of the folks that are living in the forest there are working full time and are making, living wage. A living wage there, but are just unable to afford housing because of the market there in Sisters.
Yeah, living wage in a place where housing prices are a little more within reach. Can I ask? So, I would be curious in the Sisters area, what is 65% or 80% AMI?
So that's, and we were actually just looking at these tables. So I know 80% for a family of 4, so that would, let's say, 2 adults, 2 kids, is just a little under 84,000. I believe the 100% AMI range for Deschutes County is in the 95 range. And then the rents commensurate to that are coming in, let's say for a 2-bedroom unit, that's going to be about $1,800 and that's capped by those state rent and income tables. And in kind of my research, that's coming in anywhere between 5 and 25% lower than market rate, but is also, because these will be restricted affordable, we can't take it from, hey, this affordable level today, let's say we see another market spike in Sisters, we're not going to be able to then raise those rents by 50% tomorrow. That's both state law and then also our mission as a nonprofit organization.
And do you have the numbers for 65%?
I can look those up.
That would be great at a later date, or yeah.
I'll pass that rent table.
Thank you. I guess my one other question, there's not a massive amount of apartments in Sisters, but in recent months we've been tracking, I wouldn't say high, but meaningful vacancy rates in apartments in the city of Bend. There was a period of time when vacancy rates for rentals was, under 1% in Bend. And, now for some of these multifamily housing projects, they got, they're running 10% vacancy rates, things like that. Do we have any of that kind of data for Sisters?
Not off the top of my head. We do have an 89 unit multifamily development, 6 buildings coming online basically now. It might be a good test case for what's happening right now in the market to see how those are being leased up. So we can definitely reach out and see. You're right. We don't currently have a lot of multifamily. We do have some in the pipeline and some being completed. And the city council's made a lot of adjustments over the last few years with efficiency measures in our development code to add densities and things like that. But we are a little concerned about that too, just watching, the market in Bend with the multifamily. And so we are curious how this new development will lease up. But I can ask and dig into that for you a little bit more to see if we do have that information.
Thank you.
So Clayton, I'm curious, you said 5 to 10 units.
Yes, ma'am.
So how many do they really need to fit this need?
Well, so we're leaving, we've left the MOU intentionally broad and kind of within a range so that when we get closer to that lease up time frame, we can go to the fan advocate there in town, Family Access Network, and poll them and say, okay, out of the folks that you're working with in the community, how many of those folks are either unhoused or living in a fragile situation or are overly rent burdened? And then we can index that set aside based on that feedback we get from them. And that's pretty standard in terms of our MOUs at this stage of a project before we've even broken ground, is we want to kind of say, okay, what does this need look like at the time of lease up versus look at this today?
Because I remember a project a couple years ago, Jordan, before you came, anybody from anywhere could get in those apartments. And I remember talking to the person at Rancho Vance, Viejo, and his employees couldn't get an apartment in Sisters. So it's really frustrating, I think, when you see, you follow the law and yet the people that live and work there can't live there. So this unit is actually 40 apartments. Is going to have the capacity in order to rent to people locally, or are some of them going to go elsewhere?
So yes, 40 units locally. The issue with rental housing in the state of Oregon and just I think nationally with fair housing laws is we cannot require proof of residency in Sisters. But what we can do, so take that as the stick. We can, as an organization, put out a lot of carrots to solicit local folks moving in. One of those is the set aside with Family Access Network. Another one is that we have 3 units set aside for ag workers in the property. I've actually done a lot of legwork with help from the city, EDCO, others, to reach out to both Forest Service District Office there as well as local farms. And again, before we get into that lease up time frame, we're going to be pushing specifically these units out to those local groups, whether it's, the small farms, FAN, other organizations, workplaces. And I think that's been the beauty of my collaboration with Eric Strobel with EDCO there locally, is he's going to be a great asset in making sure that as many of these units as possible are going to folks that are either Sisters residents or functionally Sisters citizens.
That's great to know. And then I do want to say something that the Nova Apartments are going to be opened up relatively soon in Redmond. That's Workforce Housing, 24 studios. And I believe I heard today that the rent there was going to be maybe a little over $1,000. So that is Workforce Housing in Redmond. So, what a great job they did in updating the Squire Motel from the 1960s.
Yeah,
It's really
yes,
beautiful.
ma'am. It did look really good.
Yeah, it's, so thankful that that's happened. So I know that we're getting more housing going.
There a motion?
So moving approval of document number 2025-128, amending a 2023 agreement allocating ARPA funds to the City of Sisters to revise language in Exhibit A.
Second.
Just acknowledging, so this is 65% AMI to 80% AMI, which is acknowledging, so the starting rents will go up accordingly or be able to go up with this change. I mean, that's what we're doing here, basically.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yep, that's fine. So calling for the vote, Commissioner Dare, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. So you go build it now. Thank you.
On time too. Don't-
Hey.
No pressure, Clayton.
Item number 7, special project grants mid-year update. We've got a few folks for this. Jen, yep, there we go.
That's real quick before I get started.
All right.
This is the draft strategic action plan from the Newberry Regional Partnership.
It's everywhere.
Get that Brenda entering.
Is this a publishing moment kind of right now or?
Draft,
Yeah.
draft.
But this is a draft that's being shared.
Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. So our second week in a row of coming before you. We had, from the last video lottery fund allocations, we had 4 special grant partner projects, and we had 2 updates last year, our last Wednesday for the mid-year update. And then we have 2 more organizations coming this week for mid-year updates. So first up is Newberry Regional Partnership, and I will just turn the floor over to Megan and Julia and let them introduce themselves and give an update.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Julia Baumgartner. I'm the Community Development Programs Manager at COIC, and I'm also the Acting Board Secretary at the Newberry Regional Partnership. I'm here with Megan Tuck, who's a Program Coordinator at COIC as well. And we have been supporting NRP, as we refer it to, since the beginning with facilitation, grant applications, and grant management. I will start with a little refresher on NRP. So the Newberry Regional Partnership is a team of public and private citizens that have come together to develop a long-range plan for growth and change in South Deschutes County. Our goal is to create a community-led strategic action plan and to provide a path for community civic engagement and education in the future. NRP began with convening a working group of devoted community leaders from South Deschutes County in 2023. And following that, a survey was conducted in June. Based on the results from the survey, we designed a civic engagement series based off 6 dimensions of community vitality. Additionally, we facilitated focus groups on 4 topics: information collected from the community gatherings, focus groups, and then a successful community action summit helped to inform the strategic action plan with the objective of providing community-led projects, programs, and structure to mitigate the negative impacts of growth, rapid growth in the region, and have local agency in the future. We requested funding and were graciously awarded $5,000 from Deschutes County to help with implementing the Newberry Country Strategic Action Plan, which will have a direct impact on the South Deschutes County community. We have had some delays in finalizing the plan as we have been working diligently with consultants and partners to find consensus around strategies that have been identified. And as a result, we have yet to implement these strategies. However, as of today, we are very close to finalizing the strategic action plan with consultants. You have one of our final drafts. We're hoping to complete it as soon as maybe this week. And then once we complete the plan, we will have a final booklet designed and printed within the next month. So this will look similar if you've seen the Sisters Country Vision booklet, as well as Envision Bend. So we want something that's really tangible and nice to look at and easily distributed across the community. The action plan, as you can see with what we've shared with you, it's organized into 7 focus areas and includes 27 final strategies that each include recommended lead and support partners and implementation timelines. These strategies are the result of a comprehensive community engagement effort in the region, as I mentioned, including the public survey, focus groups, community meetings, and a poll of draft strategies. In November of 2024, NRP hosted a community summit where some 75 Newberry Country community members and stakeholders were invited to give their feedback and workshop the drafted strategies. This was a very successful event that brought the community together and produced very meaningful discussions about the most pressing issues in Newberry Country. Each of the 7 focus areas also calls out one of its strategies as a game changer.
which is a major initiative that will involve multiple partners and significant resources over a long period of time in order to implement, but that will also have a positive, even transformative impact on the region. So I wanted to share with all of you some of those game changer strategies that the county's funding could help kickstart. Also, I'm aware that some of these are really big, and we know that $5,000 is not going to go super far in implementing this, but it will help kickstart a few of them that are already underway. So again, we have these 7 focus areas. The first is Resilient Newberry Country, which focuses on wildfire and public safety. As you know, this is one of the top priorities in the community. Our first strategy there is expand funding and education for wildfire preparedness and prevention. There are a couple efforts that are already underway to apply for funding to support these efforts. Some include Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program and a potential Thriving Communities Grant Program also through the EPA. There's also an All Lands Initiative, which is a new initiative that includes federal and state agencies. NRP has already had an initial meeting with this group, and we've expressed our interest in participating in this collaborative effort. There are also ongoing defensible space initiatives with local partners, and people are starting to look to NRP as a source of community outreach and education. So that's kind of where we're seeing our role within these initiatives. The second one is coordinating efforts to address illegal camping on public lands. There's also already some initiatives underway that have begun, led by the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, including BLM, Forest Service, City of La Pine, NRP, COIC, Rubicon, among others, which is really focusing on what we can do to collaboratively address community concerns. The second focus area is Livable Newberry Country, which focuses on growth planning and infrastructure. This is one that is maybe a little bit more challenging to implement, but implements traffic safety improvements for major roads, arterials, and access to Highway 97. The next is Sustainable Newberry Country, which focuses on environment, natural resources, and outdoor recreation. The game changer strategy there is assist property owners in addressing septic system failures. Next is Thriving Newberry Country, which focuses on health, wellness, and human services. The game changer there is improve access to healthcare specialists and emergency room services. Next focus area is Prosperous Newberry Country, which focuses on jobs and economic development. And the game changer strategy there is to create a defined downtown area in La Pine with small businesses and better traffic flow. The next is Inspired Newberry Country, which focuses on education, learning, and youth activities. And the game changer there is to support efforts to increase student graduation rates. There's a lot of really great work happening right now with South County Collaborative around this issue. A lot of momentum there. The next is Vibrant Newberry Country, which focuses on arts, culture, and civic life. And the game changer strategy there is to support a La Pine-based independent news organization. And there's already, again, a lot of interest from community members in starting a regular radio or podcast show that focuses on local news. There's great energy in the community around this as well. So there are a few of these that I would say are already kind of underway, where we anticipate using the Deschutes County funds. So I just want to thank you again for your support, and I want to hand it over to Megan to talk about our implementation strategy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Again, my name is Megan Tuck. I'm a program coordinator at COIC, working with Newberry Regional Partnership. So a lot of the implementation timelines that we have for these strategies are estimated to be at about 3 to 5 years. Some are more ongoing initiatives. But like Julia said, these funds will assist us in some of the initial efforts to tackle these strategies. And how we're approaching this work is NRP will likely be convening action teams that will be focused on each of the focus areas. They'll consist of community leaders, stakeholders, and partners that are interested in working on the topics. Each action team will collaborate on launching some of these projects and initiatives, as well as identifying funding sources for their projects. And NRP will be supporting these action teams through facilitation of meetings, securing funding, and just overall general coordination of those teams. And while the action teams have not yet been formally created, like Julia said, there's already a lot of energy around this, and there's many community leaders who have already begun coordination on their own with some support from NRP. But yeah, a lot of initiative and motivation there. This just shows how the Newberry Country community is engaged, organized, and more than ready to implement the plan. There's, like we've said many times, there's a lot of energy, and I think we just want to keep riding this wave and support the community as much as we can in implementing these strategies. Additionally, funding from Deschutes County will continue to support NRP's work in organizing and facilitating the action teams, as well as potentially provide some seed funding for the action team's priority projects. So whether that's maybe funding a planning effort or whatever it may be that folks need to get off the ground with their projects, this funding could help with. And once the final draft of the strategic action plan is approved, like Julia mentioned, we'll be designing a printed booklet that will be distributed widely throughout the community. And Deschutes County is going to be a key partner in implementing a lot of these strategies, as you can see in the document. So we look forward to working with you all and county staff on the implementation, and invite you to engage with the action teams as well where you see fit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So what is Newberry Country? I think of it as Sun River, Lapine, everywhere in between, including Northern Klamath.
Spot on. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, basically Sun River down to Klamath County and everywhere in between. And again, this focus has really been on bringing in a lot of the folks that live in unincorporated areas that don't really have a City of Lapine or City of Bend to go to. And we're initially hoping that this would provide kind of a platform for the community to come together with concerns and ideas to address Newberry Country.
Sun River Owners Association recently kind of gave the thumbs up that they wanted to be at the table also, right?
Yep, as well as Sun River Resort.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we had, after our Community Action Summit, we had a number of folks wanting to join that were invited to be part of the process, and then were asked if they could join our working group. So we have a working group that's made up of probably now we're up to like 18 or so members. We have like the chambers of commerce, we have local banks, we have now the sheriff's department, the fire department, the county, the city, yeah, Sun River Owners Association, Sun River Resort, and many more. Very comprehensive group.
You have anything?
Oh, yeah, I have some questions. I'd be curious, among the strategies identified by the Newberry partnership so far, which ones, if you could rattle them off for me, which ones the county is envisioned as a key partner or a significant partner in implementing, and then kind of as a follow-on to that, what the thought process is for that. For engaging the county in those, in those actions. When I, I am a big fan of community visioning and community action planning processes. So I was very excited to hear about this effort in the beginning. I felt a little bit disconnected. I'll share. I mean, there was a number of kind of focus conversations or other small work group efforts that I heard about really late. And then when I asked about participating, I basically heard back, well, this is kind of just for locals. So, which, I appreciate that. And at the same time, as someone who has done a tremendous amount of work on public land management, throughout South County, I felt like I might have something to offer to those efforts. But so I'll connect that back to what your thought process is for engaging the county in specific strategy implementation, because I want to get a better sense of what my role might be in helping to champion those things.
Sure. And I should have all of the strategies in front of me right now. But I think Okay. Just to jog my memory. But yeah, some that come to mind first, I would say, is definitely this assisting property owners in addressing septic system failures. I think that one feels pretty obvious, as it relates to, you're all very familiar with the issue. Megan and I also manage the Central Oregon Septic Assistance Program, which is why this issue is near and dear to our hearts. And just the depth of the issue. And we were kind of pleasantly surprised to see it rise to the top also among community members. But I would say there's a lot of coordination there already ongoing. We've already worked with the county on applying for that community change grant. I would say working collaboratively to seek out funding, something we're actively doing. I know we had some coordination last week on the House bill that was presented on DEQ. I'll be testifying tomorrow as well on behalf of kind of COIC and our efforts to support additional funding through DEQ for grants specifically that are really needed to help the low income households, which are many that are dealing with septic issues in South County. Also just coordination with Todd Cleveland and the sanitarian, as well as we were just talking about the rebate program, and we've seen how useful that has been to offset some of the costs when they're, upwards of $35,000 systems. That rebate has really been very helpful. So I would say primarily that is one that comes to mind first, is just these also creative brainstorming around how to continue to solve this issue. I would love to work closer with all of you on that. Also expanding funding and education for wildfire preparedness and prevention. That seems like a no-brainer also. I was on a call yesterday with the county about this wildfire defense grant, community wildfire defense grant program, and putting together a proposal for that. So coordinating with Kevin and others at the county on grant applications where there's funding opportunities. And also the issue of coordinating efforts to address illegal camping on public lands. Also very pressing issue for the community, and that has already been led by the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office. So I think there's definitely more coordination and opportunity there. Do you have any others that come to mind?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'd say a lot of the transportation related strategies as well, whether it being county roads that are in Newberry Country, or just general coordination around safety and the connections that has, it's all intertwined here in our region. So I'd say those are some strategies that come to the top of my head. But yeah, so far we've worked really closely with the county staff. They've been wonderful to work with and very supportive of all of our efforts. And so any chance we can have to engage the Board of County Commissioners as well, I think we welcome, and we'll definitely be looking for opportunities for that.
Well, and I'll acknowledge, Commissioner Chang, that this is the community survey, digesting it. We have the professionals, referring to Steve Ames, and he's done this in Sisters Country and the Bend area. So we haven't started yet, because I've asked the same question you. Do you want me to go to a meeting? Do you need some help? Do you want me to be on a committee? They're like, no, not yet. So I'm just pointing out, you and I are in the same spot.
That's surprising.
Yeah, I think I would say that it has been heavily focused on community input and what are the issues that are rising to the top. I think that's been super important for us to be front and center. And I acknowledge, the opportunities for you all to collaborate and be part of that. And I would also just invite, if there is interest in joining the working group, that is an open invitation as well, where there are time and resources available to help us participate in that. I think we're always looking for more support there as well. And one other strategy that did come to mind is under sustainable is cleaning up trash and garbage from forested areas. We've also already been collaborating with solid waste, and they have been supporting with waiving some of the fees for, I think it's 60, what's the metric? lots of dumpsters full of garbage that have already been cleaned up, and we're very grateful for that collaboration with solid waste to waive those fees.
Yeah.
So I think a lot is underway, and would invite you all to continue to collaborate, and we will continue to reach out to you as well. I think we're, as a young new organization that's 2 years old, we're figuring it out also. And this plan is really guiding us. And so we're excited to have this plan approved and ready to go. And also will be kind of a living document, and we'll be adapting as the Sisters Country Vision has been as well, and kind of looking to them for a little bit of that guidance. But yeah, as we said, we're just about to start these action teams. So invite you to join where you see fit.
Well, I definitely also would welcome thinking or, thought process on the partnerships part on how to integrate us in. I definitely feel like that post Darlene 3 fire meeting, that wasn't a great way of integrating us in. I mean, certainly it's I welcome the desire of residents to engage with the Board of Commissioners on those issues, but so many of the topics that were brought up that evening were very long-term, complex discussions, and just kind of getting thrown in, getting peppered with questions on things that we need, multiple sessions to really unpack and discuss. It wasn't, I didn't leave feeling like that had been a particularly productive discussion.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody did, except that we learned a lot from that meeting. And I think that was, yeah, it was a complex night. I think
Yeah.
we will never forget that night.
But just an opportunity, there's probably a lot of lessons learned from that about how to engage in these really long-term, complex community problems, and to bring, key stakeholders and elected leaders in, to help make it a constructive process.
Yeah, and I attended a meeting in Sisters that Jordan had mentioned that I would say was very well done, and I was excited to kind of learn from from that experience as well, and see yeah, how we can do better in incorporating that. And we've thought a lot since that meeting.
Very different communities. So, I mean,
I agree
there's,
that
there may be things to learn, but I mean, you're working with if you're working with different people, you might need different kinds of approaches.
And I will just note that we've heard a lot from the Sisters Country Vision experience, that there were a lot more tensions in the community before this vision process was done. And that kind of helped to alleviate some of those tensions. And so we're hopeful that something similar may happen in Newberry Country.
Yeah, no, it's a great opportunity to engage concern and energy in a community in a positive and constructive way. So thank you.
The thing to point out, though, it's Darlene 3. We've been warned, and you've been warned, and you've been warned. And in your resilient statement, just reading it, said you want to hire a coordinator position, but has that been done for a community-based fire prevention and protection coordinator position? That's like on the second paragraph. So is that something that has been accomplished, or does this have to be proved first, and then we're going to hire something that clearly your community needs? Because we've had number 3. We do not want to have number 4.
Correct. Yeah, so that was actually something that came out of the community summit, from folks, from feedback that we heard from the county and other folks of a need that's really in the community for something like that. And this is just a plan. So a lot of them are ideas too. They're not necessarily mandates for folks to follow through with, but recommendations that the community feels that could be beneficial. So that has not happened yet.
But if those 73% of the people were incredibly concerned with this, of almost 1,000 surveys you got. So
yeah.
Yes, we can't keep sliding over this fact. We
For sure.
actually need something, and if you have come up with it, the coordinator position is something that would really be beneficial. I would hope we would be doing it sooner rather than after Darling 4.
Yes, definitely. And I think, sorry, do you, the, yeah, at the end of the day, we're working on the community's timeline as well. And so hoping, as we know that this is a huge concern, while the implementation timeline may say 5 years to ongoing, that doesn't mean the work doesn't start tomorrow, but it'll just take a while, but the work can start soon.
I know we're going to have a joint meeting with Lapine, new people in the city council. When is that date, Nick? Do you know?
February 26th.
Okay, February 26th. All right. So great, because I know they didn't want us to meet at the end of the year regarding this issue because it was going to be new people in office. So, okay, February 26th then.
I will just say, to your point as well, it's all dependent on funding as well. And so I would say that Kathy DeBone has been supporting with some coordinating efforts through some of the grants that we have received, and COIC through our rural community building program. We've been supporting this effort a lot with staff time and coordination, as well as grant applications. We were successful in receiving around like $75,000 in grants last year, which we were really excited about. And now we are looking to find funding for implementation. So that's why we've started to coordinate around some of these larger grants to help implement this. So I think it's all pending kind of implementation funding and grants as well.
Great.
Well, and yeah, for disclosure, I mean, Kathy does bill back to this on some small contract. I don't specifically know the numbers. You probably do. And this is the dollars from Deschutes County that's going towards this. So you're talking about future spending of the $5,000 that we've come up with, and you've had other grants that have got you this far also.
Yeah, primarily with Ford Family Foundation and Roundhouse Foundation, St. Charles, and the city of Lapine as well.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Next up, we have Jim Bonds with the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative to give their mid-year update. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation. There we go.
Thank you.
You can advance it on that. I'll turn it over to Jim to introduce himself and give his presentation.
Thanks for joining us.
Nope, I don't know what happened. There we go.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Bond. I'm the program director at the Deschutes River Conservancy. In June of 2024, the County Commission approved a $15,000 award to continue to support the efforts of the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative, and I'm here to provide the update on that effort. I wanted to give a little context and background just to kind of refresh everyone's memories. What the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative is a coalition of stakeholders in the Deschutes Basin who envision a future watershed with healthy streams, thriving agriculture, and vibrant connected communities that both rely on and steward the water resources in the basin. So the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative was really formed in 2020. By and large, it's facilitated and coordinated by the Deschutes River Conservancy and the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council. There are over 45 diverse members, and we're working together to balance water use between human and ecological needs. And one of the things that I'm going to probably underscore throughout this discussion is the fact that with 45 diverse members, it's not just a conversation, it's really building consensus across all of these different stakeholders to develop a plan that is going to guide the future of water management in the basin for all these diverse needs. So as I mentioned, the main development team behind kind of drafting the plan and bringing that forward to the group is the Deschutes River Conservancy. We provide a lot of technical support and writing and strategy development. The Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council provides key facilitation efforts. They really are critical to kind of helping convene the meetings and organize the meetings in meaningful ways and making sure that there's process that's adhered to. And then AMP Insights is a consulting firm that we have used over the years with a lot of technical and professional experience in water management concerns across the West. And so they've been very much instrumental in the strategies we develop and the documents that we're pulling together. So that's just the kind of primary development team, but of course, the lower half of the slide here, and I'm not going to name them all, but these are many of the members of the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative. So they are representing all kinds of interests from cities and county interests, communities, kind of writ large, environmental interests, irrigation and agricultural interests, and agencies, state agencies, federal agencies, many different people that have a stake in the basin on how water is managed. I also wanted to note that the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative is really building off of the success that we have seen in this basin over many years. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. As a side note, I've only been with the DRC for about 1.5 years, but I've been working in watershed management throughout the West for almost 2 decades, a little over 2 decades. And the Deschutes Basin has been sort of kind of front and center in the conversation around good strategies, good planning, and good collaboration at a basin scale across communities, much more so than many other basins in the West. It's often very contentious whenever water is at stake. And it's not to say that it's not contentious here, but the point is that there's a tremendous history of collaboration in this basin, and we continue to build on that with this Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative.
Question, or maybe just digging in a little bit here. So on the back, the previous slide, I know that the Deschutes River Conservancy itself was formed for the purpose of everybody working together and being able to manage and try to stay away from listing Endangered Species Act issues and working together. So then now we have a Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative, which the DRC is part of. So I'm just wondering, and so you may not be able to answer this, but just a question that comes to my mind. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Commissioner Chang, but so we have a group that everybody's going to work together so we can manage water and work, bring to the same table. And now we've started, and it almost looks like another group doing that same thing. DRC was made for this purpose, and now we have a collaborative, which I don't understand the dynamics. And as I said, I don't know if you don't need to.
I don't think that the DRC has the capacity to engage 60 or 70 stakeholders at the depth that this planning process entails. On a regular basis, the DRC has a board that, is pretty representative of stakeholder interest groups. But it's a pretty small board. And when you're trying to develop a plan that everyone in the basin is going to follow, support, and lend to the implementation of, you need those people much more directly engaged. I mean, it's in this, we heard about the Newberry Partnership process, right? You probably could have 6 members of the community get together and come up with that same strategy, right? But it has so much more ownership and engagement and investment from key stakeholders, the broad range of key stakeholders, because they've had this much more inclusive planning process happen. So that's the way I would describe it. So DRC is right at the middle of helping to organize and plan and guide the facilitation of this Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative. But, you know, if you look back at this timeline, you know, the DRC was right in the middle of the Upper Deschutes Basin study, for example, you know, and that was an effort that was needed to, you know, put everything we know together and identify the opportunities moving forward. The planning process now following that is to get people to commit to do the things that need to get done.
I'm just observing that probably back to Deschutes River Conservancy 1996 was the table for everybody. And then the dynamics and the politics are like, well, but those aren't me, and I'm going to start my own organizations, and I'm going to maybe be able to threat, lawsuits if I don't get my way. So a new table had to be formed. So now I'm just interesting history. Yeah.
No. I mean the organizations that participate, you know, all these stakeholder groups that participate in the water collaborative, they existed before the DRC. They were not created in reaction to the DRC. And
I'm not referring to all of them. No, yeah, I mean, there's a couple names on there that are groups that are interest groups that have formed since. I'm referring to just a subset.
Well, and I think Commissioner DeBonne, what the DRC is, we're very much a part of this. I think the vision of the DRC totally aligns with the development of the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative. I don't see the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative necessarily as a separate organization or entity. It really is just a large scale, let's get everybody to the table and let's make sure that it is truly a consensus built plan across all the stakeholders and not just DRC has like the bold title, the bold, kind of byline at the front with then some other groups kind of behind that. It really is meant to bring everybody together so that we can have these deeper conversations and find solutions. And not all of the solutions that are going to be identified and put forward through the plan, they may not all be ones that DRC would do independently if that was the case. And that's the point, is making sure that we're finding that consensus across all the different groups so that we can move forward together.
Right. And if you really want to dig into the history, a lot of the folks who helped to found the DRC back in the 1990s, they are still around in the community. I'm blanking on Ron's last name, who served briefly recently as the director of the DRC before Cade. But Ron was there in the beginning from COID, and people like Jim Mannion from the Warm Springs tribes. They could, I'm sure they'd be happy to talk with you about the history and how consistent what we've got right now is with what was originally envisioned.
So I just wanted to kind of tack onto that idea of the vision. And again, to reiterate, we think of it at the collaborative as 3 legs of the stool. So those 3 legs of the stool all have to be aligned and to provide the right sort of support for the basin. And so those 3 major legs of the stool will be our healthy streams. So we're storing flows in the Deschutes River and its tributaries, water quantity and quality to support fish, frogs, and other wildlife. In addition to that, thriving agriculture, support irrigated agriculture by promoting water equity and increased efficiency so that production in Central Oregon remains viable. And vibrant communities, making sure that there's enough water to secure and maintain a safe, affordable, and high-quality water supply for urban communities in one of the fastest growing regions in the country. I also just wanted to point out that at this point in time, the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative is focused on the upper Deschutes. As a whole, the collaborative will engage in water issues that go beyond the upper Deschutes, but so many of the issues right now that we are facing with water quantity and water distribution and species concerns are focused primarily in the upper, and that's where there's a lot of different potential strategies to employ and lots of different interests that are really at stake, so right now, this is the primary focus. The outcome of the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative planning effort is going to be a document, a comprehensive water management plan This just provides kind of a little schematic for kind of the stages of development of a plan. We have been in the writing and kind of review stage for the last year and a half. We are getting closer to finishing that with an expectation that we'll have that done by the end of 2025. So the plan format that we are following mirrors the Oregon Water Resources Department place-based planning guidance. That's really broken out into 5 main sections. There's a description of the overall process and how this group was formed and the sorts of procedures that we use throughout to ensure that the voices are heard and that that we are truly building consensus across the stakeholders. One of the chapters is the basin-wide characterization and context. So that really puts all of the information from the basin into a chapter to sort of set the context and stage. The water management issues identifies all of the different major needs in the basin and what we're trying to resolve. The strategies and tools are the variety of tools that we can implement. And then the final chapter is implementation plan, which is the chapter that we're working on right now. And that's really the hardest part, is bringing all these pieces together to line out what is the forecast for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And that just shows this is where we're at in that process. So we're very close, but one of the things that I will underscore probably a couple more times is that when you're dealing with 47 stakeholder interest groups and sometimes more voices than that, you can imagine that every topic, every issue that we bring forward to the group, there's a certain level of scrutiny, sometimes a lot of scrutiny, and a lot of revisions, a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions around all of these things to try to find the path forward. And so
if I could also just say that, Jim's correct that, the first 4 chapters have been drafted and the 5th is in drafting right now, but they are all still in draft form. The process that Jim just described of needing to essentially seek consensus from close to 50 stakeholder organizations. I suspect there's going to be a lot of revision and working over of those drafts before we get to a final product.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that forward. We're at the final chapter, and we think it's going to take the better part of this year to get through that final chapter, based on a lot of the just the previous conversations. And we know that this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where it gets really hard to pull everyone together for that kind of consensus decision making. So I just put a couple slides in here to just sort of illustrate that it's not one topic, it's not one thing. There's a whole matrix of issues and potential pathways to resolve issues and needs that need to be distributed across a lot of different stakeholders. I know you can't read this, but this is again sort of under the implementation.
Right, I can't.
I know it's just but it's a matrix of these are different categories of strategies. So you've got the broad sort of broad brush needs, and then all the sorts of tools that you might be able to use to address that within that. And I'm not even sure that this is entirely comprehensive, but it's meant to illustrate how much we're working with. I also wanted to kind of just go back to that history of collaboration and success that we've seen in the basin. So this is just a chart from 2002 through 2024 that has shown water conserved and flows restored in our streams across that time. There's been a lot of work with a lot of different people, DRC planning program and our partner efforts, irrigation district labor investment and commitment has been tremendous. And then local, state, and federal funding support has been a huge contribution to getting us to this point. And it has been growing over time. And we really do believe that the more we come together and continue to work through these issues as a collaborative, we'll continue to see success. So
So, I'd like to ask about that real quick. So that's a cubic feet per second rate or something on the left?
yeah, sorry, you're right. There's no label on that. So that's CFS across not just in the Deschutes, but in some of the tributaries like White Chiefs. But these are the gains that we've been able to make through a variety of different tools and solutions that we put into play to restore flows. So that's flow restored in our streams. It's also flow that's moved around in the basin to help support agriculture, like in North Unit Irrigation District, and that sort of thing. So a lot of work, a lot of progress, and we're continuing to try to expand that.
So that's just kind of an estimate of total volume of water that's, I don't know, I've been optimized or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but this isn't an estimate. This is real proven water in stream that we've been able to, we can measure those outcomes over time.
Jim, I as I look at this is an impressive chart. For the goal of stream flow restoration, it's important, and you may have additional slides that speak to this, but it's important for us all to also understand and appreciate that these gains in stream flow are made in tandem with improvements in water supply reliability in agriculture. So, I mean, for any CFS you see on here, the backstory is that somebody who had, an agricultural water user who had water rights, may not be getting all of the water rights that they had, that they have on paper, but they have far improved reliability of the water rights that they need to actually do their business. So, North Unit farmers being the best example, in tandem with these stream flow improvements, we see North Unit farmers who have a much higher probability that they're going to get the portion of their water right that they need to actually do their business, as opposed to what they had before as the most junior water rights holders in the basin.
So I know that planning processes are important, but they can also take a lot of time. And sometimes there is fatigue around just how long the planning process can take. But I wanted just to highlight again and recall why it is an important thing to do to come together so that we can have that consensus across groups, so that we can be ready to mobilize, so that we don't have to debate every potential project that comes forward in the basin. The plan really is to set the stage, provide the guideposts for us to be able to leverage funding to accelerate implementation, and just generally to help kind of coalesce around policies that advance the goals and the consensus agreements that we've built as a team. So this is my final slide, and I want to thank you again for allowing me some time to come to you. I have not been able to speak to you guys yet. So it's really a nice opportunity to be here on behalf of both the DRC and the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative. The funding that you've been able to provide for us has really been a key component. It's not the only piece of funding that we receive, but it's a key component to help us do all the things I just described. And these are complementing other funds from Oregon Community Foundation, Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and the Bureau of Reclamation planning grant funds. So again, just great appreciation from us, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
I noticed that Water Watch of Oregon was one of the 45 groups. They're a Portland group. I'm just wondering, are they the only group outside of our community that's part of this?
That's a good question. I don't think that they're the only group outside of the community, but I can double check that. I can go find that.
And so do you have any idea how much more water is actually getting to North Unit? Because Deschutes County has the shortest growing season next to Wallowa County in the state. And I just see a lot of fallow land up in Jefferson County. I've heard about a lot of farmers that have committed suicide over all the issues that they've been dealing with. And I'm just wondering, how much more water are they actually getting? Like, can you quantify it?
I can't quantify it here. I can find that information for you.
Okay, I mean, I just know that they're the people that really need it.
Right.
And we definitely want to have our food produced closer to home.
Agreed.
Great idea. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We let the schedule slip a little bit, but not too bad. So item number 8, courthouse expansion budget request. Thank you for joining us today. So this is, budget request. Yeah, go ahead and take it from there. I was gonna try to explain it, but that's what you're gonna say.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Lee Randall, Facilities Director. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the courthouse expansion project. I'm happy to have senior members of the project team here with us, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Eric Nielsen with the Deschutes County Facilities. I'm the Capital Improvement Manager.
Wayne Powderly, Director of Project Management for Cumming Group, and I'm the owner's rep.
John Williamson, a project executive with Pence Contractors. We're the general contractor.
And Paul Boundy, Managing Principal, LRS Architects, the design lead for the project.
And I just want to add that in my view, we could not have a more experienced, dedicated project team leading this effort. And I'm really grateful for this team and to have them here with you today. This afternoon, I'll provide an overview of the project budget, and then each team member will speak to their own area of expertise. And then we'll have a summary. We're here today to request a $2.9 million increase to the project budget to be allocated from reserves within the Campus Improvements Fund 463. This would increase the total project budget from $43.9 million to $46.8 million. I realize this is a difficult conversation and topic. 3 years ago, with the Board of Commissioners' support, the county embarked on this effort, the construction of a sorely needed expansion of our courthouse, a need that had been anticipated for over 20 years. As the team was assembled, we began our work with seriousness and diligence. Central to every meeting and every discussion was our unified commitment to controlling costs while providing a high-quality facility that embodies the civic presence appropriate to the delivery of justice to our community. As you all know, during the development of our project, the economy and construction segment in particular have encountered significant headwinds due to inflation, supply chain disruption, and major commodity price increases. And for us, given our courthouse location on a restricted site in the middle of downtown and connecting to an adjacent building with active court proceedings, our courthouse project has unique challenges and complexities. As we've discussed previously, these added costs can be divided into 3 areas: unforeseen site conditions, construction schedule extension, and design revisions. And now I'll turn to my team members for additional discussion. Wayne?
Thank you, Lee. So yeah, as Lee had mentioned, there's 3 main areas where these cost overruns have come from. So I'll just go into a little more detail, and then I'll hand it over to John and Paul to talk a little more into the weeds. So 180,000 of that 2.8 million was directly from unforeseen conditions. Of those unforeseen conditions, and I think some of you have already been told by this, but we discovered some unsuitable soils. When we went, there was 2 existing dry wells that were installed in about 2004 in between the old A.J. Tucker building and the existing building where we are building the new extension on the south side of the courthouse. As we were excavating out those dry wells, we discovered that those soils conditions were not suitable for the new foundations that we were putting in as part of the expansion. So with the structural engineers' help and new details, we were able to come up with a plan for new underpinning foundations that we attached to the existing building that would shore that up basically so that we could continue with our foundations on that south side. So that was the bulk of,
Comment real quick. So dry well is for drainage, correct?
yes.
And obviously soft sandy soil or whatever is good for drainage, but now it's bad for building a foundation of a big building.
Correct. And it was so close to the existing building and right under where we're putting the new building that it's just not structurally sound to support the new building. So, but with that fix, that was the bulk of that 180,000. We were able to support the existing building and then continue with what we are currently doing right now. Another unforeseen, we ran into some underground storage tanks that were there, as part of the old AJ Tucker building. As you know, AJ Tucker had many lives and they had some storage tanks underneath. So that was a bit of a surprise, but we were able to dig those up and go through the proper channels to get those removed and disposed of. And then another unanticipated cost, we had an original allowance for relocating the existing security main entrance over to, as you can see, those modular units, which sits now between the gray building and the existing brick building. So we had about I think it was just under $250,000 allowance to do that. But as we got through and we were doing coordination with the DA's office and with OJD, just that scope kind of grew a little bit. And so part of that unforeseen cost was to make sure that we had that temporary entrance, exactly how all the different parties and stakeholders needed it for safe, secure entrance during construction. And that'll be in place all the way through to the end of the project.
Well, and I'll also acknowledge that, yeah, I've gone through that entrance and you go inside and it's a little disorienting because I didn't have a feel for what it used to look like, but it's very professional looking right now inside. So that was, it was a very different experience for me because I had been in there before, but the finished product during this temporary phase is very professional.
That's good to hear. The second kind of bucket of money of the 2.9, and John will talk more about this in detail, but was direct costs for the time extension. So through the design of the permitting phase, that took a lot longer than we had anticipated, about 6.25 months. But there's costs associated with that, from the management team, for us here in front of you, and then also all the way down to all the subcontractors for that extra duration. And as I said, I'll pass over to John here in a minute, but he'll talk about that more. And that's about just a little over 1.5 million. And then the last element of the 2.9 is design changes. So the original GMP was finalized in March of 2024. And that was based on a 90% finished set of plans that was used to bid out to all the subcontractors. That bidding process happened between December and January, and then vetting of all those numbers and everything was finalized in February. And then we had the GMP established and approved in March of 2024. But through the permitting review process with the city, there was just additional changes, finishing the drawings, and then changes from the city underground utilities, code revisions, many changes that basically encompassed about 1.2 million. So we've already approved those change orders to keep the ball rolling. And that's really where we've used the majority of the owner's contingency already. And so this 2.9 million will, portion of that go back to replenishing the owner's contingency to complete the project.
Well, and then as this was happening, we were informed, delays in permitting, but it was maybe unknown in-ground utility, as in we knew something went from A to B, but we didn't know exactly where. So all of a sudden you're looking down on the ground and had to work through that, whatever that was. I don't know more detail than that, but that's what I was informed of.
That was definitely part of it.
And I'll say that was, it's one of the challenges of demoing the portion of an existing building, demoing the AJ Tucker building in its entirety, and then finding some of those utilities that weren't marked, that weren't on as-built, and then addressing them in real time.
Exactly. So between those three main kind of buckets, that's where the 2.9 is comprised of. So I'll hand it over to John. He'll talk a little bit more in detail about the scheduled extension.
Yeah, as Wayne mentioned, the overall schedule extension value was give or take 1.5 million. And that was as a net schedule extension. So the schedule got longer by 6.25 months. The primary cost drivers for that schedule extension, as Wayne mentioned, extended management and project oversight for all the companies involved in the project, both the companies sitting at the table here and the more than 40 different trade partners that we have engaged on the project. So there's a lot of entities involved. So it's the extension time for a host of those entities. There's some direct labor cost escalation figured. We have a lot of man hours on the project that shifted from 2024 to 2025, and then some from 2025 into 2026. So there's projected man hour escalation associated with those extensions. We did incur some environmental impacts by shifting some of the construction activities into less desirable weather windows of the year. So certain activities such as pouring concrete and things like that do require additional measures when done in wintertime conditions versus summertime conditions. So there's some costs associated with that. And then lastly, a little bit of material escalation. Things do cost traditionally more as you look forward into the future. So we encountered some of that. To combat some of those impacts throughout this process, the team was really focused on mitigating wherever possible. During that delay, the initial 6.25 months, the teams worked across the board to reduce staffing wherever possible to minimize some of those delay costs. As we looked forward to the remaining construction activities, the team was able to reduce that overall direction from receipt of permit to project completion, reduce our scheduled activities by about 6 weeks. So the team is using strategies to help bring the time in wherever possible, and the team continues to do that. During that 6.5 months, some of the things that Wayne spoke about, we were able to get some activities completed, and that took some risk off the table. A lot of the underground and unforeseen condition items did come to light during that phase, and we were able to resolve those. Yes, he talked about the cost impacts, but able to mitigate any time impacts associated with those as it happened within this 6-month period. And then lastly, we were able to alleviate procurement risk. We do have some extremely long lead items on the project, things like electrical infrastructure, generators, switchgear, HVAC equipment, things like that, that could have been a potential risk for the project. We got those things coming in such a timeline that now we have them well in hand to be ready when we need them, and we don't have any project risks associated with that. So that in a nutshell is some of the mitigation measures the team's been working on, and we continue to look for opportunities to improve schedule moving forward.
Okay. At this point, Paul's available, and, and he is going to talk about some of the design revisions that were driven through that design and permitting process after the 90% set of construction drawings.
Thank you, Lee. Yeah, as Wayne mentioned, we generated the GMP package off of 90% set of documents, and that was a set that was issued in October of 2023. From there, I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of our process and kind of give you a couple of examples of where.
Could you talk closer to the microphone?
Yeah, I'm
please?
sorry. Yeah, I'll give you a couple of examples of where some of those costs might have come from, and I'll be talking through what our general process is through that time after that GMP package was issued. We submitted in November for permits with the City of Bend for the building permits and the like. We'd already been in for land use since 6 months or so prior to that. So we received land use approval after we issued the GMP package, and that was initial comments came in from that. Conditions of approval, if you're familiar with those, came in December, and final version of that came in January. And those generated some changes from the city's point of view for the infrastructure. There's a water line in Bond that we needed to remove, an old water line. It's kind of like they were discovering things just as we were discovering things in the site as they were going through this process. So it was cleaning up the multiple buildings on the site. They had us move our sewer lateral from one street to the other. And this is after all this is designed and priced and put into the GMP. And that's kind of a sense of those. And from those packages, from that time on, we would issue packages of drawings, which we call CCDs, which are construction change directives. Each of those was generally associated with a specific item that we've either uncovered on site or has come up that needed to be addressed, or permit comments. So there's multiples of those. And some of those are tied into the change orders and change order requests, which you may not see all of those parts and pieces of it. But the first one we issued, the CCD number one we issued, it was dealing with some of the stuff that didn't get into the design at the end of the process. Working with the courts, we discovered in the jury room is our construction plan, as we got into the construction starting the construction activities was to leave the restrooms for the jury, and they were very close to the construction area. And we thought that's not a smart thing to do. So part of that change order, we added a couple of bathrooms within the jury room, and left the existing ones, but kind of blocked them off so nobody would have to use those. So we were able to take what we were proposing to be a 2 to 6 week break in the potentially not having jury assembly to just eliminating that altogether. So that felt like it was a positive change to make. From there was also what we call an ASI, which is our architectural supplemental instructions, which we broke out the early work package. And this was the temp entry. This was all the demolition within the building. This was some of the construction walls. As we were getting the construction crews in there to start working away, we needed to have all these pieces broken out. Protection walls. If you walk through there now, there's places you can go and places where you can't go. And we had to maintain exit paths from that building. So there was some pretty complex issues with the egress. We were able to resolve them, but they were all kind of happening after that ideal time of October. So they were changes to that GMP as we got into it. There were several others that were pretty straightforward and simple. Some lighting revisions, constructability reviews. We were issuing these documents as we were uncovering things in the field too. There were some issues with the roofing, how the actual roof drainage worked, and how everything kind of came together. Big dollar items that we ran into on this thing, CCD 4, kind of in the middle of all these, picked up all the structural revisions. Now we had a kind of a perfect storm there of comments from the city and probably not enough rebar showing in the drawings from the engineer. And when the GMP was issued at 90%, his structural detailing wasn't complete. And so we were kind of working with that. We picked all that back up in CCD number 4, which is one of the larger cost items. And then CCD 07, which we were issuing these all through 2024. This one was issued in September 2024. This is when we have all the permits in place. All the permit comments are closed. We picked up some of the other owner and courts requested revisions in that package. There was some electrical, plumbing, all the revisions for those pieces come in, and we're pretty confident that we've, through the process of getting through plan review, getting everything bought out, all these things going, we're pretty comfortable where we are at this point. But yeah, it's taken a lot of struggle for that, 6-8 months of trying to get this stuff constantly going, documented properly, costed, priced, worked into the schedule, find mitigation. We're still constantly looking for value engineering opportunities within this to try to bring the cost down. So that's kind of been our design process over the last 6 months, or that's critical 6 months.
So I'll just summarize and then we'll be available for questions. In representing the county, this team's worked diligently to program, design, and begin construction on what will be the premier county facility. We've acted in real time as new challenges arose, as Paul mentioned, and others, and we've worked really hard to address those and to resolve them. I continue to appreciate the ongoing commitment of our Board of County Commissioners to our community and to providing a functional and safe courthouse with the appropriate civic presence to deliver justice to our community. We recognize that increasing the budget of a major project is a difficult discussion to have, and we've not approached this challenge lightly. We've taken it on with seriousness, diligence, and hard work. I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today, and I appreciate any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you very much for those updates. Commissioners. I know, yeah. So you attended the facility.
Oh, yes, I've been going
Project
to the
Review Committee.
Facilities review, and I was told the one prior that it was 1.2 million, which sounds like it was the design revisions. Maybe that was the November meeting. And then I was at the last one, and then all of a sudden it popped up to 2.9 million over. And the contingency, I've been told by people in the business that normally you have a contingency of 5 to 10%. And why ours was so low remains, that is, to me, is totally unanswered. But to quote your words, seriousness and diligence. So originally the courthouse was supposed to be 27 million. And somehow, I don't know where that number came from, that 27 million, but then all of a sudden we were told, no, it's now 40 million. But just last week, we heard, okay, I realize this is a fresh project. It's not a remodel. I know remodels are always, they always add extra things to them. And that's why you would never have a contingency of only 3% because you are remodeling, and remodeling projects are nightmares. I mean, ask anybody who's remodeled their house. But you know, it went up to 40 million. So that's a 49% increase. And now we've got this on top of it. And now we're looking at, what is it? Almost, what are we going to now? 46.8 million. And is this actually going to stop? Are we going to go up to 50 million? And that's where I'm at. What I want to say about the Redmond project is that one is actually coming in under budget. It's not a remodel, and I will give them credit for that, but it's coming in under budget. And then the Sun River project, which we are going to have the opportunity to go there on the 20th of February. That was a remodel project because they used the fire station and they've added the police department to it. They actually are coming in at budget. Now they did it there. It was 18 million. Jim Pfister happens to be on our budget committee, but I knew they were going to watch it, and they knew they were going to make choices. If something was more money, then they were going to have to pick something else. Yeah, I will be continued to be worried. What is this really going to end up costing us? Because we are clearly, we are way over 27 million, which is what we were first told. I don't know where that number came from. Maybe it was the dark ages, 2019 or something, but the original number was 27 million. And if I would have known it was going to go up to, let's say, perhaps 50 million, maybe we should have built something smaller.
Yeah.
Where did the 27 million come from,
They're all
Lee?
great points.
Was that from you or from somebody else?
No, that was from me. And that was related to the best square footage cost estimates that we had at the time in, I believe, late 21 and early 22. So going on 3 years ago. And it was based on data as we prepared those. The data was about a 6 to 9 month lag. So as you recall, during that time, we prepared the estimate, provided it in the fall. And that data was based on rough order of magnitude construction cost, square footage cost estimates from the previous 9 months. And you know, it's interesting that we have experienced some of the same challenges as the projects that you mentioned. Redmond, for example, the police station was initially estimated at $15 to $30 million. 6 months later, it was estimated at $20 to $25 million. At the time of the bond, it was $49 million. And I believe that budget may have been increased at this time. So when you look at the tracking of various projects in our region, we're not alone. And you make a good point. Other projects have increased in similar rates as they go from conceptual cost estimates to 50% design estimates, and then up through final GMP, and then carrying a contingency through the end of construction. One thing that we think will be beneficial as we move forward to the completion of this project is, as we mentioned, the replenishment of the contingency. That contingency, as you point out, wasn't sufficient to get us to this point in the project. Going forward, that the contingency, the original amount, will be replenished, as well as we've moved beyond some of the highest risk phases of the project. So going forward, we'll be carrying approximately on the remaining portion of the project. Do you have that number?
Yeah. 4.4% contingency.
And that's with about 22% of the project complete. Go ahead.
So that's 4.4% on the owner side. The contractor's contingency still remains at about 5.4% of remaining spend on the project. So combined, there's about $3 million of contingency.
So I appreciate the concerns. It's something, as I mentioned, that this team has looked at closely. Cost concerns while creating a premier facility was what drove us right from the beginning, and it's been very challenging.
No questions. So just big picture, you know, it was a $25 million project, you know, so kind of the same scenario there. Oh, and then it slipped away to $40 million with the, you know, just inflation and cost of doing business. So it really did jump up there. But I've got confidence in the team here. I mean, this is the moment we're doing it.
They're looking at it because they're right across the street. That's what I said. Pence is going to be looking at that thing, and I'm hoping that the look is pleasant, because we in Deschutes County are not made of money. And if this was my project, I would be like all over costs constantly. We can't have a 2-month delay to our finance reports on this. I want to know that this thing is humming along and we are staying within our budget for the rest of the time. Okay, so what is it? We were seeing numbers from November 22nd at our meeting in January, and I really want to see it every month. I don't think that's too much to ask for. I don't want to keep losing sleep over this project. I want to know that you all are worrying about it too, because it is the people's money that we are spending. It's not my money. It's not your money. It's the people's money. And we keep forgetting, look at our country right now. We've spent $2 trillion more than we've taken in the last so many years. You can't keep spending more money, and our budget is definitely challenging. So I'd like to have more reports, or at least monthly, timely reports. I want to see that we are on budget. We're not going over.
So finishing my comments. Thank you, Commissioner.
You're so
But as I
welcome.
say, I do have confidence in this. This is a downtown corner, that is one of the things that's tangible to me. Third version of working on that courthouse, the old gray courthouse, or maybe the fourth, because I think there's 2 versions, the red courthouse, and now building out to the corner. So there's just other layers to this. And knowing that we're building in the contingency again right now. So, I share the passion with confidence, though, I guess, is where I'm coming from. And I will support this. Any other thoughts?
I would just say thank you for your explanation of your detailed explanation of what has happened in these last months with this project, and that comparison of the Redmond Public Safety Building initial estimates to final estimates, that was helpful. As helpful as a comp of just reinforced our experience. And it sounds like from first estimate to final costs, their increase was even bigger than ours was. So that's sobering, and also I guess there's some reassurance in that this is not just an oddball experience. This is happening, and I hear about it all. I hear a lot about similar stories a lot on the Oregon Transportation Commission at this point. There are a whole lot of projects that were promised around the state in House Bill 2017 that are either not even finished yet, or have cost astronomically more than originally anticipated. And it is a really it's a hard thing to hear, and it's also something that that labor, materials, all kinds of things cost more now than they did 5 years ago, and that's something we all need to work with.
Is there a motion? Oh, yeah, Nick.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll just say we'll commit certainly to providing monthly updates to the board. I have felt and heard and experienced the stress of the team as each challenge has come up along the way. And I also heard today, and I know we didn't get into the details of this, about how much you have done to keep the project from going even further above budget than it already is. We talked about the materials, the supply, the changes. So I want to thank you for doing everything you can to keep the project from not going further over budget than we already anticipated. I think the team is absolutely committed to doing everything you can to deliver the absolute best possible project for the community as quickly as we can, as responsibly as we can with the taxpayers' dollars. So thank you.
With that, I'll move approval of increasing the courthouse expansion project budget by $2.9 million dollars to a total project budget of $46.8 million.
You can.
I will second it. Okay. So yeah, just a couple other thoughts. It does kind of take your breath away, the cost of inflation and just the amazing things that are happening in the economy right now. Inflation's still propagating, it's like it's being plugged in down the chain sometimes where it's still happening. But I do want to provide confidence, to the team that's working on here, the knowing that I do support, let's build a great product out there. Let's open it up on time the next time that we're setting for the courthouse and, move on from this project. So I'm very confident in the folks out there that are doing the work too. So any other discussion?
I guess one other, it won't affect the way that I vote, but I am curious. It takes a lot of steel and other kinds of building materials to build a project like this. I am concerned about recent and current discussions of tariffs, what that might do to the costs of some of these building materials. And I would love to get a sense of how much material we already have under contract or purchased and how much is outstanding, because that strikes me as a real risk factor in the coming months.
Yes, we have a certain amount of that information currently, which we can provide, and then the team can gather more of that and provide that to the board as well. One of the reasons some of those time-sensitive change order requests were approved and out of the contingency were for that very purpose or concern, because we were concerned about the potential of tariffs and the potential of additional major commodity increases. So some of that concern was addressed with the early change order requests that have already been approved. And then, John, you may have some current information on that topic.
Yeah, we, to Lee's point, uncertainty in the horizon, wanted to really secure those arrangements here over the last couple months and worked hard to do so. And as far as how much of the project has been procured, it really is, from our perspective, about 97% of all remaining activities. So we've got a couple one-off things such as like painting that we have not secured a vendor with. But other than that, everything else is fully secured. So move quickly to alleviate that potential risk.
Yeah, we purposefully broke out that 1.2 million of those change orders because we knew that was specific to construction changes, material costs, as opposed to the 1.5 million for delay costs, which were more management sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
we could get those approved and get those materials ordered.
Right. Well, that sets my heart a little bit, even a little bit more at ease. If we're only at 22%, but we've done a lot of the procurement already for this project. That makes you feel a little bit better about the likelihood of future increases. Thank you.
Calling for the vote, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Sobering discussion, but full speed ahead.
Thank you, commissioners.
No, full speed ahead, watching your costs
There you go.
and knowing that we are not made of money. You've got to really watch it.
Thank you.
I just want to note that there is an accompanying resolution to follow up on your decision today that will come through on a consent in the near future. So I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Item number 9, annual report for prescribed fire, smoke, and public health community response plan. Just 40 minutes past where we thought we might be. It's just one of those days. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. For the record, Deschutes County Forester, Kevin Moriarty.
Sarah Worthington, Regional Climate and Health Coordinator with Deschutes County Public Health.
We are here today to request approval for the 2024 annual report for the Prescribed Fire, Smoke, and Public Health Community Response Plan. This report is provided to meet the requirements to maintain the exemption from the 1-hour air quality threshold in the Oregon Smoke Management Plan granted in December 7th, 2019 for the Bend Smoke Sensitive Receptor Area. The report describes actions taken from the period of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024, regarding the implementation of the Bend Smoke Sensitive Receptor Area Community Response Plan. So I can just provide some highlights of the plan. Hopefully you've been able to see it at least a little bit. You know, for this year, for 2024, the U.S. Forest Service was able to burn 6,582 acres of underburning. And some of the highlights of that would be the prescribed fire training exchange that occurs every spring, that the Nature Conservancy and the Forest Service have a joint effort to providing valuable training opportunities. 849 acres were completed during that. And then probably the biggest highlight that we had this year was the EPA pilot burn project, which was they were able to accomplish 1,864 acres in that project. Without going into a long discussion of that, that is essentially a MOU between the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Interior, and the Department of Disease Control and Prevention that focused on an increase of pace and scale while minimizing the impacts from smoke in the community. Typically, this area only burns about 300 acres per year, so accomplishing over 1,800 acres was quite an accomplishment. We did receive 4 intrusions from that particular time period of burning, but they were granted clearance from the DEQ because it was all there was all a collaborative effort prior to the burning. And I can go into some of the graphs right now that you'll have in your report. And I just want to acknowledge Thomas Stokely with the Nature Conservancy, who helped us put these graphs together. We've really been trying to look at some of the data as far as like the difference between prescribed fire and wildfire. So on your first graphs, essentially what you're looking at is a comparison between 2 of the sensors that we have in Bend. The pump station, which is probably the most well-known sensor. That's the one that we really rely on for impacts to the community. But we also decided to look at the 8th Street sensor too, to kind of see if there's a difference between those 2 sensors with smoke. And we did see quite a difference. There actually, while we did get intrusions on that pump station sensor, you can see that the impacts were significantly less out at the 8th Street sensor. So we looked at that even a little bit further. You know, these also show the wildfire comparison to prescribed fire, but we looked at a little bit further on the next page and just kind of looked at what time of day that smoke was actually impacting the communities. And like we expected, that smoke was coming in really late at night and dissipating really early in the morning. So though we did receive intrusions during those time periods, by business hours, most of that smoke had lifted away and wasn't impacting our communities. And then we also compare that to the 8th Street sensor as well, and you can see even less of an impact over a little more on the east side of town. The last graph we had too, we wanted to look at the wildfire smoke itself in a comparison. And like I was mentioning that, you know, with prescribed fire, we do get impacts at certain times of day, but usually we get dissipation. In wildfire smoke, you don't really see that. The AQI levels maintain high and above thresholds for long periods of time. You know, a lot of the smoke that we received was from the Little Lava Fire this year that was close to Sun River. That was a lot of the smoke we were receiving. And you know, there was time periods for almost weeks that we were exceeding AQI thresholds that what we consider unhealthy. And so that was some of the data that we were able to tease out with some of the work we were doing this year. Some of the communication that happened this year was highly revolved around the EPA project itself. A summary of the notifications that went out, there was 35 press releases, 31 text alerts, 60 media stories, and 20 events attended. And then we even provided a couple of those in the back of the appendix of this document. We provided a couple of those flyers that went out to the community as well. And Sarah was an integral part in creating those flyers. So there was a lot of communication, a lot of media that went around this EPA grant or this EPA project this year. But it was fairly successful. I think there was some lessons learned as far as like how those organizations communicate, but at all in large, you know, we were able to study the impacts, and they were as we expected, you know, short periods of time, but you know, we did get the dissipation we were expecting. So I guess at this time, I'll just leave it up for questions, and Sarah can help answer any of those as well. But you know, feel free to provide any comments or questions.
Looks like it's a great reference point for other communities that are even starting down this path, you know, having the history and then how now having different ways to look at the data, being able to see that smoke effect. And we all know that the wildfire smoke can be very intense too. So as I say, I've never been too worried about the prescribed burn. So, you know, when I tell people just deal with it. It's a little bit in the spring and the fall is okay. So, but thank you for putting this all together.
So Sarah, have you read the report out of the University of Washington talking about smoke leading to dementia? Did you see that report?
I saw it. I think I skimmed it.
Okay, because I feel like I had smoke at my house for like 8 months. I mean, and I drive through to Tumalo, and you dip down to Tumalo, and it would be just loaded with smoke, like lots of mornings this past year. We just had smoke, and then the BLM is now burning on Friar Road. And so then I'm going to have more smoke. I mean, they did, and then they didn't, you know, so it's just like, and the day we were out, evaluating the burn on the, whatever it is, west side of Bend, the air quality index that day was over 150. And OSHA says you really aren't supposed to be out in it. And I thought, how amazing that we're out there looking at what that burn did, and yet we shouldn't have been outside in that smoke. I mean, in the air quality. So it's, you know, that's why I'm really happy I found 500 goats in Terrebonne, that we've got to start doing other things besides just burning. We've got to get things cleaned up, and definitely we have to start logging some trees. It's
goat report from our foresters.
Yes, we could have a goat report. No, he actually, the man who owns the goats has done it for Jefferson County. He's done it for Bend Parks and Rec. But I would really love to see goats do an amazing job. And that's part of the thing, what they said happened in LA is that in the Palisades, normally they do run goats there. They run them into Topanga Canyon, and they hadn't been doing that. So, yeah. The smoke, it just went on and on and on last year. And it's affecting people that are coming here for our tourist industry. You know, do you want to be here outside? Of course, I know you could, it might be bad in Sun River, so you can go up, you know, you can go up to Smith Rock that day or whatever, but the smoke, it just went on for months.
The wildfire smoke, yes.
Well, we had a quarter of all the burn in the nation was in the state. So all the land burned, the 1.9 million acres that burned. And I'm hoping that people will assess how they approach their reaction to fires next year, or this year, I guess, actually, 25. We're now in 25.
It was a very challenging season for wildfire smoke, and this project was pretty unique for us. And I will say it really gave us an opportunity to think about how we proactively communicate about smoke readiness, and really thinking about that prescribed fire season, that time of year when we're really not super excited to see smoke showing up. It is very limited in duration, and it's a good opportunity for us to get into the mindset of being ready to be nimble and do what we can to limit our exposure to smoke when the wildfire smoke rolls in throughout the summer.
But then you're talking, what about the animals that are outside in it? I mean, we can go inside, or we can have our HEPA filters, or we can wear a mask, but what about all the animals that are here? I mean, you know, what are we doing to them?
Yes, the important thing to remember, you know, as we've heard, the impacts of prescribed fire are brief, not nearly as significant in scale as wildfire, and localized. And the alternative, if we're not prescribed burning these areas, is that they could go up in a high severity wildfire. And that's, I'm sure the animals don't appreciate, you know, a night of prescribed fire smoke, but If you asked, I mean, if we were able to ask them whether they would prefer that over having their home burned to the ground in a high severity fire, just like the residents of our communities, I prefer having a little bit of prescribed fire smoke a couple of days in the spring, versus having a wall of flame arrive at the edge of the city of Bend. So that's, we're in a no great choices situation, but there are choices that are much worse than others. And I want to express appreciation for the work to do this community response plan, which allows us to accomplish the prescribed fire that we need to keep our community safe.
Actually, they cleaned up the West Side of Sisters beautifully when ODOT said they killed 2,500 trees. I was never sure if they really did, but they did clean it up beautifully. And you saw the grass that came back up to feed the wildlife. And they logged it and they made it so much safer. So, wasn't that even like medium risk or something per that wonderful map from our state? So yeah, they made it, I think it was yellow instead of where the pivots were on the other side.
That bit of work along the Highway 20 corridor, that was, valuable fuels reduction work, but the moderate rating on the state wildfire hazard map is not attributed just to that project. It's attributed to the massive amount of work that the Sisters Ranger District has done to the south and the west of the city of Sisters over the decades, which had which included a great deal of prescribed burning, which had a significant impact on overall vegetation to show up in the wildfire hazard maps.
Just to comment on that, as Deschutes County, we do look for other opportunities. We definitely acknowledge that smoke is smoke, and those impacts are going to impact people, whether it's prescribed fire or wildfire. So we try to minimize those as much as possible, but we also try to look at alternative methods too, especially really close to town where we're not really encouraging prescribed fire. Really, the only time we would do that if there's cost feasibility or access feasibility issues with it. And also prescribed fire does really reduce the risk of catastrophic wildfire. There is good evidence out there that the combination, the suite of treatments of thinning and prescribed fire does greatly reduce the risk in comparison to thinning alone.
Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the 2024 annual report for the prescribed fire, smoke, and public health community response plan.
Well, seconded.
Is there anything else? There's no real signatures involved with this.
No, it's
just acknowledging it.
Submit the
Yep. Okay. Any other discussion?
I have a question after we can.
Okay, so
vote.
call for the vote, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Dare, and chair votes yes.
So, I very much appreciated the tremendous amount of work that people put into that EPA pilot last year. Because the way it was reported in this document, because of that pilot, we were allowed to have intrusions in that window of time when those 1,864 acres were being burned. I am struggling to get answers from the Forest Service, from the ODF, from state air quality regulators about whether we will have that kind of flexibility again this year, because 1,864 acres is great, but it's not enough. We need 10 years of that in a row to get to where we need to be to really make our community much safer. And do either of you have a sense of whether how the pilot of last year translates to prescribed firework in the Bend area this year? No.
We discussed this ahead of time, knowing that this might be a question, and we honestly don't have an answer at this time.
Yeah.
We just haven't received any information on what is going to be the forecast for this year.
Yeah. Do you, well, how do I ask this? I'm considering calling and rattling some people's cages. Would you say anything to dissuade me from doing that? Is there a reason not to do that?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, personally, I think, last year, short of the smoke intrusions itself, it really was just a really good educational opportunity for some of these organizations and agencies that don't quite understand the logistics and the outcomes of prescribed fire. So I think a lot of lessons were learned that would not necessarily be needed moving forward. So yes, I would encourage, to get those numbers up to a much higher level and move forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I very much intend to call people and say, look, we learned how to do this. If we don't keep doing this, if we have catastrophic losses in my community next year or the next year, because of fires moving through these areas that should be getting burned right now, there will be hell to pay. That there will be a lot of federal and state bureaucrats who will have to bear responsibility for that. And that's I'm very concerned. So thanks for just kind of catching me up on the situation.
So you've seen the concern in the city of Bend with people in wood fencing, and if it's touching their house, how that spreads fires considerably. But there's a phenomenal article in the Wall Street Journal about 2 weeks ago about the Getty Villa and what they had done in order to keep their community safe. And they said trimming landscaping was critical. You never stop trimming landscaping. And around here, you see a dead tree here and there. And anybody that has a juniper tree in their yard, please seriously consider getting rid of that tree, because they're Roman candles if you see them catch on fire. So there's a lot of things that our community can do, and pick up that article from the Wall Street, because I did think that it made a lot of sense what they had done, and the fact that they actually saved that in that Palisades fire was pretty phenomenal.
Thanks for that information, Commissioner Dare. I'll definitely take a look at that article. And, as you know, we have a pretty robust program with Project Wildfire, really trying to promote defensible space, home hardening, that in conjunction with landscape treatments like these prescribed fire is really how you make these communities fire adapted. And that's our mission. So.
Well, the amazing thing is my house that had a fire go around it in 93 with 2 fire trucks there and 5 firemen, this time survived without anyone. And right down the hill in a development that had 250 homes, only had 1 house burn in 1993. This time there are only 10 homes standing. So I'm really proud that my house, a Mediterranean house, was able to survive it. But I have so many friends now that just lost their homes. And you've always got to be working on your landscaping.
Thank you very much. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
And I think Sarah, you should read that article. Yeah. Since it's health.
Yeah.
Are we done?
At this time, other items, and then we do have executive session, then the day is slipping away, but anything else for other items? Nick?
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday, I touched base with you, and Brenda, you can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, as we've been coordinating with the Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, COIC, on the appointments to their board of directors. The Board of Commissioners last year appointed Chris Piper and Christine McConnell to 2 of 3 seats, and also Jay Patrick, now City Councilor Patrick, to a 2-year term. And we received paperwork that indicated who the board members will be for the next year. And so in coordination with Tammy Bainey, the executive director, And it appeared that all three commissioners in my individual meetings with you support continuing those appointments for another year with Christine and Chris Piper. I see heads shaking yes
Support
in the
that.
affirmative. And then we would initiate a recruitment for the third seat, which is generally categorized as employment education, but we understand it can be broadly recruited for other members of the community. So unless Brenda, anything else that I didn't capture correctly? I captured that correctly, but there was a little bit of confusion on the terms, et cetera, and we've clarified that. So unless there are any other comments, I'm just confirming the.
So we'll just, open up a recruitment for one position available, COIC, Deschutes County appointment. And I support that.
Sure.
There you go.
Thank you, commissioners. That's all.
Yeah. And Commissioner Chang, you're doing the airport committee, is that correct? Redmond Airport Committee.
I think that's what we agreed to.
Yeah, I'm just,
I haven't made contact with anyone
I
yet.
got an email I got today, so I'll forward it to you and I'll respond also the fact that you'll be taking that. So just confirming that I'll let them know.
Okay.
Anything else for other items?
Yes. Did you guys get this email about being in a bike race on June 14th? And they want us to be on bikes. And I'm like, why don't we all be on horses? That would be way more fun for me. So, anyway, what'd you guys think of that? Did you guys respond?
I did not respond. I saw it.
Scared me to death. I was like, oh my gosh.
I still have my mountain bike from college that I don't ride enough, but I did ride it last year.
Oh, good.
I think the proposal was to get us on some 3 speeds with like a big banana saddle or something like that. It should be fairly safe, but
Somebody be out of town that day.
I responded, Molly, that I would be game to do that.
And I haven't responded, but I think it'll work for me too. I'll have to get some nice shorts for it, maybe. So, you brought it up to remind us to sign up or?
No, I just wondered what you all thought, because I remember when I talked everyone into riding a horse
Yeah.
in the Sisters Rodeo Parade, it's getting out of your comfort zone. So anyway, I just don't know what I'm doing June 14th.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a rodeo somewhere.
You may not be there.
I don't know.
Anything else?
I'd like to practice riding a bike.
I can report back that that legislative concept for a youth acute and respite emergency mental health center bill is both moving fast and adapting and shifting fast between what the state legislature can afford and what St. Charles can accommodate on its campus and what Jackson's House might be willing to build, and what they can get licensed and have billing authority for. There's a lot of parameters that people are trying to kind of fit something within. So the original concept in that House Bill 3186 from 2 years ago, it may be changing over time. I just between the COCC event and this board meeting, I had a chance to just sit in on a discussion that St. Charles and they pulled in behavioral health staff was having with Providence in the Portland area about pulling in the hospital association, the state hospital association, to support work on this. And there's a lot of stuff. There's just a lot of stuff in motion at this point, but I hope that when the dust settles, there'll be a proposal for something locally here that we can all get behind.
Sure.
Holly's tracking it.
Good.
Much better than I can.
So Friday morning, we'll have our legislative meeting, catch up on everything. Chris Doty had sent an email to us and I was able to click on just a little bit of this hearing that went on today. So House Bill 3119 for the advanced clean trucks regulation. And, my conclusion would be, because there's some good testimony about the value of it, but advanced clean trucks, if that goes into, if it stays in as a requirement, there's a proportion of heavy trucks. And I'm just thinking our road department, government may be expected to buy the electric trucks that the overland truckers can't use because it doesn't work cost effective or the distance. And then we could be paying a whole lot for about half of the distance capacity. I don't know if we're going to be plowing snow with an electric truck anytime soon. So it's substantive. You know, if they do this, it could be really interesting.
Well, the good news is California pulled out and Chris gave me some really good points. I did sign up to testify tomorrow on it.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, it's
But yeah, he was just
unbelievable. Has no common sense. We have one charging station. You would need to build 55 stations. Did he tell you that story? 55 stations a week, starting 3 weeks ago, and you wouldn't be done until 2035. So
well, and as I say, the way I see it, you know, I am driving electric. I've had for 5.5 years now a car, but I'm probably not going to drive an electric truck, even pickup truck with 4 tons of hay uphill across the county. Well, up and downhill. So, but the heavy work probably needs to still be done with you know, a commercial diesel. And let's celebrate all the opportunities for electric as it works us up to those larger vehicles.
well, did you see General Electric, Verona, what they're doing with electricity, they're taking a jet engine with doing the capacity on the ground? It was all over the business channel this morning. And I was thinking immediately if we could get that down in Lakeview for that biomass plant, because Pacific Power said they weren't going to get there for 5 years. So yeah, this sounded really like a phenomenal opportunity for more electricity.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so time for executive session.
Great, because I only have 3 more minutes. Okay, thank you.
The Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.660 subsection 2E, which allows the board to meet in order to discuss real property negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting in executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made in executive session, and at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the meeting.
We're back from an executive session and please proceed as discussed. Thank you. Anything else for this meeting? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.